Well, thank you very much. I want to share with you what I think is probably the single most important health issue facing America today, and that is cardiometabolic risk. We have an epidemic of obesity now. And these are the statistics. 66% of adults in the United States are considered overweight, and that's a BMI of 25, body mass index. And 25% are over 30, which is technically obese. So this is how we've been changing, or how we've been growing in girth since 1990. So here's a map of the United States, and basically, if you're in the light blue area, it's less than 10% of the population over a BMI of 30. And then to 98, and the dark blue indicates 15 to 19% BMI over 30. And then look at this. When you're in the dark red, that's greater than 30% of the adults are over a BMI of 30. That is just remarkable. And the same kind of thing is happening in our children. Now, why is this happening? Of course, we could speculate. It's fast foods, it's high caloric energy drinks, sedentary behavior, video games. There's been a lot of it. Probably all of that is involved in this. So you have this epidemic of obesity, and you have risk involved with that. But we know that among people that are over a BMI of 30, that 15% are going to develop diabetes mellitus, adult onset. Which ones? Which ones? And I think that's where we need to do blood testing to try to figure out which ones they are. Well, here's the impact, the health impact to the United States of obesity. And this is a short list. I'm going to be focusing my talk on diabetes, metabolic syndrome, hypertension, dyslipidemia, and atherosclerosis. But as you can see, there's a lot of other issues that come along with obesity. Metabolic syndrome, for example. And here we see that because of this obesity issue, that almost 35% of adults have metabolic syndrome. And you can see we've got this in gender, men in gold and women in purple. And it is somewhat age-related as we go up in age. That is substantial. Almost over a third of adults have metabolic syndrome. There's some gender differences if we look at different ethnicities as well. Here's the white population, men more than women having metabolic syndrome. And look at this, in the African American population, almost a 50% difference between men and women with metabolic syndrome. Less of a difference in Hispanics. So what is metabolic syndrome? This is the classic categorization of metabolic syndrome. 5 categories: hypertension, high triglycerides, high glucose, low HDL, and an increased waist circumference. This would be measured at the midriff around the navel, 35 inches for women, 40 inches for men, not the belt size. And this is, if you have 3 of these 5, you have metabolic syndrome. Now, interestingly, only about less than half of the people that have metabolic syndrome are actually going to develop diabetes. Which ones are they? Well, cardiometabolic risk encompasses really all of the cardiovascular risk that goes along with metabolic syndrome. So this is really picking up some notoriety as perhaps a better term, cardiometabolic risk. And here's a schematic that really kind of gives you the whole scope of what's going on with obesity. You have lipid abnormalities that we described that are part of the metabolic syndrome. You have insulin resistance. You have hypertension, inflammation, and hypercoagulability that all go along with this cardiometabolic risk. I want to drill down on some of this with you. What is the engine that powers all this? It's the adipocyte, the fat cells. So we have a different sort of concept of fat cells. When I was in medical school in the 80s, we thought of fat cells as just sort of energy storage and nothing more. We're coming to find that they are very metabolically active. And so what's going on is we have this factory that is synthesizing hormones, or adipokines, and we're going to discuss some of those, like adiponectin. They're creating inflammatory markers, either directly or indirectly. And as the adipocytes hypertrophy, there is a spewing, so to speak, of free fatty acids.